basic meaning of style for a story is the characteristic way in which the author tells the story. The way in which you tell a story and the way in which I tell a story, the difference between those two things is what we call style. So every author has a different style. So first person point of view in a story is like in a diary. You would say, I went to the store, I did this. There's another way you could tell stories. You could just change it into the third person. It's he or she, depending on who the protagonist is in the story. When you use the third person, you still have three options of what you could do based on style. You could tell an omniscient story in which the author knows everything. The author knows what everybody is thinking in the story. The author knows what everybody's doing in the story. This is sort of like the point of view of God. It's a little bit godlike writing a story because you get to choose whatever you want. One clue is it'll be the thoughts or feelings of more than one person. So it's at least two people, then we call it omniscient. It might be more, but at least two. So why we say that is because sometimes the author who is writing third person, although they may know everything, they limit themselves. This is called limited omniscient. So the author only describes what the main character knows or sees. So it can't describe beyond that. The author won't describe what, like, say, somebody else is doing in another room that the main character, protagonist, can't see. Okay, now there is a fourth possibility. Objective means that the author includes no thoughts or feelings of the characters. No thoughts or feelings are described by the author. So all we get is words and actions and description of what everybody can see. You can see how most stories are not written that way. Okay, so those are our four choices for point of view. Who is basically telling the story? Is it a narrator from a distance describing other stuff that's happening, or am I telling a story about what happened to me? Now, authors also will maintain suspense through the story. Suspense basically is that sort of sensation you have where you want to know what is going to happen next. All right. And sometimes that want can be very, very strong so that it's tension. It causes anxiety. So think about a horror movie and you want to know whether the main character is going to live or die or they're going to get killed by the monster or whatever. Now we're going to find out the author really has many choices on how he or she can maintain that suspense, maintain that that drive in the reader to desire to know what's going to happen next. So one of them is foreshadowing. Foreshadowing is a hint about the future. Say you're reading a story, and then in the story, the main character is a student, and they look in their desk, and all of a sudden they see a gun. Okay, and then they don't say anything at first. They just continue on with the class. Now, obviously, something is going to happen with that gun. So while you're reading all about the ordinary things that are happening in the class, like doing their homework, watching the board, stuff like that, in the back of your mind, you know that something is going to happen with the gun. Okay, so that's foreshadowing. Some hint that something in the future is about to happen. Right. Another one is dilemma. Dilemma is a little bit like conflict, but usually it's a choice between two evils. So there's a problem, and if you react to this problem one way, you choose one solution, bad stuff will happen. But if you choose another solution, another response to it, other bad stuff will happen. So you can't get out of it. You've got a dilemma that is going to result in evil or bad things happening no matter what you do. Mystery. Here's another one. Mystery is a secret to be revealed later. So there's something that we don't know. All right, it's a little bit different from foreshadowing dilemma. There's actual something that we don't have the answer to, and we can't actually necessarily figure it out either. It has to be revealed. So we're waiting for the author to reveal that secret through the story, or give us enough hints that we can figure it out ourselves. The final one is surprise. All right. Surprise can be the ending. And normally for short stories, there will be some kind of twist or surprise at the end. But even throughout the course of the story, there can be unexpected events which occur, things that we did not foresee. They happen suddenly. And then this causes us to feel tension and suspense. A symbol, very simply put, is something that represents something else. There are some restrictions to go with that. So let's take a look. So the cross, as a very good example, represents Jesus' sacrifice. So Jesus' sacrifice on the cross paved the way for our sins to be forgiven. All of that information, the entire gospel, is condensed into that symbol of the cross. There are basically three kinds of irony. And the first one is verbal, means that words are stated and then something is the opposite of those words. A simple kind of verbal irony, though, is a pun, a word that has two meanings. And that comes up a lot. So puns are just one example of verbal irony. Sometimes puns are funny. Sometimes they're not, though. It just has to do with the double meaning, and both meanings might be correct. And sometimes, if it's funny, sometimes the author purposely makes you think the one meaning, and then you find out you've understood the wrong meaning. There's a different meaning that you should have got. Okay, another one is situational irony, and this has to do with events that happen, like basically plot. Things happen opposite of the expectation. Now, situational irony is often shortened to sitcom. And sitcoms are like the TV shows that you watch, like half an hour on TV and stuff, that are just full of jokes. The jokes are based on this one type of humor most of the time, that events happen opposite of expectation. They set you up for a certain expectation, and then they pull the rug out from under you, and the opposite thing actually happens. All right, now here's our third possibility for irony, and this is dramatic irony. This is based on, like, a drama. A drama has to have an audience. If it doesn't have an audience, it's not really a drama. So this has to do with the point of view. There's an audience's point of view. Remember, we talked about rhetorical triangle. You have the writer. They have all sorts of thoughts in their head, but only some of those end up on the page. So that's another point of view, what is actually written on the page or acted out. And then you have a third point of view, which is the reader or the audience. All right. So that audience might have a contradiction, a difference of understanding than the characters in the story. So the audience or reader knows something that the character doesn't. Yes, that's called dramatic irony. So they know something that the character doesn't. Like, for example, you're watching a murder mystery story or play, and then the murderer comes up behind the character with a knife in his hand. All right. So then we know that the main character is in danger, but the main character doesn't know. Okay, that tension is called dramatic irony. Sometimes it's funny, but sometimes it's just a tension. So that's the three kinds of irony.